Hi, my name is Annie and I'm a personal trainer.
Amazing. So, what does a personal trainer do?
Thinking about this, well, you could say the bringer of torture, perhaps on a daily basis. I think that I'm bold enough to say that actually I think we change lives. The bare bones of what we do is we help people to become stronger, healthier, physically, mentally, emotionally. The bread and butter of our job, it's training people in a gym, in studios like this, at homes. We're the accountability coach. We get people in the door. We count reps badly, but we help people to, I think, upgrade their lives physically and through the power and the medium, mostly of strength training. But that comes in many forms. I think it's a job that, especially in 2025, is so diverse. Yeah, it's multifaceted, I think, I would say.
Yeah, definitely. So, do you think, have you noticed in your lifetime, have personal trainers become more popular over time?
100%. I mean, I've been a PT now for getting on for 15 years. And it was when I started, it was still in that sort of area of being quite almost very niche to have a PT. Like my old boss, before he became an osteopath, he was a PT, I think, Harley Street. And now, Harley Street is for getting your teeth done or whatever else it might be. Sure, there's other things as well. But now I think PT is so much more accessible, which is fantastic because I don't think it's one of those areas where we should kind of make it for only the rich and famous. The
Yeah.
fact that we can help everyone to upgrade themselves physically and mentally and make that a cost effective price for everyone is brilliant. So it's definitely changed.
Yeah.
100%.
So, let's go right back to the beginning. What does your educational journey look like?
So I think it just make the point of saying it could look different for everybody. You don't have to do my route, and that's what's really good about personal training is whatever floats your boat. There's many accessible points. For me, I went to university and studied sports science, partly because at that time I wasn't sure what I wanted to do, but I knew I wanted to do something in fitness. So it's a great broad degree that you can do if you're into um, sport and fitness, I think. And then after I studied sports science, although I didn't go straight into PT, I then eventually did my qualifications through a company that just happened to be in Spain. Like, you definitely don't have to do that, and things have changed over the course of many years now. I did an intensive course. The actual course itself with personal training isn't massively long, and there's some conflicting opinions about that when you're then going to go and put, people under physical stress. You need to make sure that you know what you're doing. It's really important. So yeah, that was my sort of my route in, as it were.
Yeah. So, does every personal trainer have to get qualifications?
Uh, in my mind, 100% yes.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, it is changing, and I know there's people working in the background on this, but it doesn't come with accreditation to a particular board at the moment, personal training. So basically, anyone can do it. So I would say if anyone who was listening who looking for a PT, for example, make sure that you know what their qualifications are because there is no sort of legality of you must have a qualification. But to get insured, you have to have a qualification. And
Right.
you definitely want to be with a PT who's insured.
So, you don't have, it's not like being a doctor. You can't not become a PT if you don't have the
Yeah.
qualifications, but
Yeah.
ideally, you will go and seek them.
Exactly. Yeah. So you don't have to, but really you should do. In this day and age, there's many ways to qualify. Very lots of different companies to become a PT. I would just make sure that that person has really done thorough research into the body that they're accrediting with, and it's quite good often if that company is accredited with something like SIMSPA. Get that right? So these are some, fitness bodies out there who are trying their best to make everything a much more professional playing field. But if you speak to anyone who's been in an industry long enough, they'll have a lot to say about the fact there are some charlatans knocking around. It's the same with like life coaching and other things like that.
And what does it look like time wise and money wise to get certified as a PT?
Wow, that's probably changed. So for me, become an actual personal trainer. This is the crazy thing, right? It was 6 weeks.
What?
Yeah, you're like,
Now
you're
you're
like,
like,
what? Yeah, yeah,
but six
yeah,
weeks, 10 years ago, so I'll let that slide. But
yeah,
wow, 6 weeks, that doesn't
yeah.
feel long
Long
enough
enough.
to hand heavy things to people.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Now, I'm 40 and I've, as I said, things have probably come on a little bit, and there's different ways. So, sort of long distance learning at your own pace is becoming much more popular. I was in a facility where we literally slept, ate, breathed, PT.
Hmm.
Um, so that did work for me. And the course was around £3,500. So with inflation over the years, it's probably changed. But I think it's very important that you look at, again, who you want to study with. The cost is probably a little bit reflective. I hate to say it, sometimes if it's a real cheapie. But I think the qualification is point one. Once you've got the qualification, it's then for the rest of your, years in PT, that's where you start to really learn like any job. So from my understanding, there's lots of routes you could do, distance, part-time. And that's a good thing. If someone's like looking to get into this job and they've already got like a proper, a proper job, that might be another question for later. Is it seen as a proper job? 100%. But it is one of those things that you can very much do sort of alongside something else. But yeah, pick wisely, I think. I
Yeah.
think also, from my understanding, there are a lot of schools and colleges now that offer the level 3 personal training qualification. You do the level 2 fitness instruction first, and you go to level 3. And there are some very good companies out there who are really leveling up personal training. So the PFCA, if anyone wants to look them on Instagram, they're changing the game and they are raising all of our standards, which is fantastic.
Hmm.
Yeah.
And then what would the next step be? Are the two routes essentially self employment, or what's the other option?
Yeah. So for me, I worked for a local gym first, and I think sometimes it was again a good route to go in. Sort of originally back, I keep saying back in the day, so like I'm 60 years old, 40, but the industry's changed a lot. So that's why I think it's really important that this is my perspective. So working for a gym is brilliant because you've got access to the gym floor. You start to learn how to connect to people and talk to people. But of course, some people can go straight into self employment as a PT. Those people tend to have quite good links, maybe through sports, or maybe they're already starting to build some kind of base before the qualification and they're just waiting to get that accreditation. So I think, and then of course, online personal training has completely changed the game. And what I would say on that note is though that some people are very quick to think, right, I want to be an online PT tomorrow. It's a long slog. So yes, self-employed versus being employed are two options, but the employment sometimes just gives you that little bit of safety net to go like, okay, I don't have to worry too much about making rent this month, but I can go and start to build my experience on the gym floor and learn from there and get skin in the game, I think is really important.
Yeah. Is it about building your own personal brand, or would you argue that doesn't matter so much?
I think building your personal brand is so important right now. It's how you're going to connect to people. 100% build the brand. But I think that takes time. We get told as trainers that we must niche down. Who's our client? And when I first qualified, you don't know. Some people might know if they're like, oh, I really want to work with footballers. Brilliant. I really want to help people lose weight. Brilliant. But even that, you still need to start to work out who you are going to be in that space.
Yeah. So it's about choosing your audience, almost like your age range, your
Yeah.
potential, your gender, your all of these things.
Yeah, I think, yeah, I'd agree with that. I would just, the argument against that is give yourself time to work out who that is. And don't worry if you don't know. And maybe that will change. But it does help because might say it's an oversaturated market. I don't think it's necessarily the case. I think people connect to people, and that's how you're going to build like, know, and trust. And yeah, so building that brand is quite important in
Mhm.
2025.
So when did you make the leap from working in a gym to becoming your own PT?
So I was probably about 18 months in, and I still part self-employed. So I worked for the gym and had a little bit more time and space and energy to start to do my own thing. And how that looked at initially was I did a lot of mobile. So I went to people's houses, filled my car up with kit and just got to know everyone in the area. It was, back in those days, good old days. It was is how it's the best way to brand yourself and to get yourself out there. So that was great. And then I would say it was probably a bit of a slow burn over the next 3 or 4 years. And then I opened Enso Fit in 2018, and went from being a one-to-one trainer to becoming a small group facility. And that's evolved and changed now. But I took my time with that. And I think you have to, it's really up, it's so personal depending on what time you've got available. And yeah, literally, how much money you've got to actually pay the bills as well to make those leaps.
Mhm.
But you do have to at some stage make that leap if you want to go self-employed, and just there'll be maybe a couple of years of having to put the graft in, but it'll be well worth it.
Can you remain a sole trader working as a self-employed individual,
Mhm.
or would you recommend essentially opening a small business, limited
Limited.
company?
So I've always stayed sole, but and that's been this is so individual. I know a lot of people in my position who have gone limited. For me, sole trader, I prefer that simplicity. But there are definite benefits to going limited, which, if I'm honest, it's not my forte. Probably the reason why I'm a sole trader. But I think going limited definitely supports when you start to take things to the next level and you really start to take yourself a bit more seriously as a business owner. Um, so horses for courses there, I think. It has to suit what's right for you. And I think you have to weigh up the options and see what's going to suit you best. I've always got an accountant, even as a very small business owner, because I don't want that stress and I'd rather pay someone to take that away from me. So and get yourself a good advisor, I would say. Yeah.
Nice. So, what does a typical day look like for you?
So it's changed quite a bit. So back in the day, it would have been your typical PT day. So I would be in the gym by 6 a.m. We do the early birds, the people who need to hit the train into the city, or make that first meeting at 8 or get the kids to school. So you tend to be PTing from the hours of 6 till 8, and then you might have an hour off, and then back at it from late morning till lunch. And then we get this like dead zone, where it's like usually when the trainer trains, which is around sort of 1 till 3, and then things would pick up again 4:30 till 7:30, 8. Now, I have to say that's looked very different over the years. And the good thing about this job is you can be super flexible, be your own boss. So when I was first starting, and some would completely disagree with this, have done days of putting in about 10 hours a day, 5 days a week, if not six. And it's, again, it's, getting your name out there. I definitely would not suggest that, because it's not fair on the clients or you. So right now, things are different for me. So I've got to a place because of all those years that I'm a bit more picky with my hours, and I'm learning that there's a sweet spot with that. So now a typical day, I'll be here potentially 7 till 9. I now do a lot of online training, so I'm like a hybrid of the two. So I support my online clients, the ones who don't come and see me, and then I have about 15, 20 clients who come and see me in the week, and then some come and see me once every 2 weeks or once a month. So going back to the original question, my day can look quite different because of that, which is great. It adds a lot of variety. And one of my clients actually asked me once, "What do you do when you're not training people?" Like,
You just shut down.
but yeah, well, as self-employed PTs, that's when we're meant to be doing our books, and education, CPD, researching horrible exercises to bring people like you, and working on our own fitness, self development, and doing normal human things. But it's
So you've always got to be evolving and learning in this job.
100%. If you're not, you're going to get lost. You're going to get left behind.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And do you absolutely have to be somebody that gets up at 5 a.m. to be a PT?
No, 100. It's a great question. No, I think you can make this job work however it needs to for you, especially if perhaps you're a parent who hasn't got that time, or maybe you're just not a morning person, and no, you can make it work for you. Yes, the six a.m. club is always going to be a great time to PT. Might get some miserable people, but it's always going to be busy. Everyone likes to get it done early. But yeah, you can make it work for you.
So, any myths about being a personal trainer that you would like to debunk?
That we're robots. That, as you just said earlier, that we just shut down. I think when we don't have people around us, that we're lettuce eating broccoli, lifting 24/7 athletes. And there are some amazing personal trainers who are athletes out there. And although I do think controversial, but I do think to a certain extent, our bodies are our kind of business card, if I'm honest, that would, as a trainer, I do think it's human nature that we get judged. I think there is a little bit of that. So I think there's some myths around how we live our lives, and that maybe we're just this so resilient humans that nothing ever touches us. When actually, a lot of the time, we've become coaches because we've had our own struggles and we want to help other people. It's really is true. We can't count. That isn't a myth.
So, doctors can't write and
We
PTs can't
can't
count.
count. No, we can't count. I think it's the biggest one. I think there's still this sign of people think we're some people think we're gods, and I think social media has to blame for that. Sometimes, you're always going to see the power of influence showing the perfect, quote unquote, way to be a PT.
hmm But really, it's whatever works for you
Yeah,
and whoever
exactly.
you are.
Yeah,
And that's what's going to draw your clients to you
yeah,
at the end of the day.
yeah. I totally agree with that. Be yourself. Yeah.
You've kind of touched on it throughout, but what solid advice would you give to someone looking to become a PT?
So I would firstly say be patient. How do we be patient in 2025, or whatever year you listen to this podcast? Um, it takes time to build a client base and explore who you are first as a PT to work out where you want to go in the industry. Don't fill your diary up all day with clients. It's going to break you. And remember why you decided to become a personal trainer in the first place, because you can get suckered into the business element and then lose your own health. So I think it's really important to make sure that you keep that balance. Boundaries are really important, especially if you're a one-to-one PT and you're self-employed. So some of the mistakes I made is I'm a typical empath. I will get my kicks from people pleasing, getting that external validation. We're all the same sometimes. However, if you don't have boundaries in with your clients, they don't know where they stand. So, you make it clear to them from the get go, this is the time of day that I will not be contactable. These are my office hours. Whereas you can build up quite a friendly rapport with your clients, which I think is fantastic. And I think you can be friends to a certain extent with your clients. Some would argue not, but where's the boundary? Going for a coffee with them after training, I think is great, but keep a clear boundary so you can decompress, because that will start to eat away at the soul otherwise.
And then I suppose what's the most challenging part?
Whew. I would say that the most challenging part for me is seeing my clients not believing in themselves. And sometimes when you've done everything you can for a client, but they're just not quite ready for that change. You know, it's the classic phrase of, do you want change or do you want to change? They're two different things, and we can't always force people to make those changes if they're not ready. So I think from just knowing that sometimes you you're a coach, but you know, you can't step into someone's soul and do it for them. So take the old classic phrase, take the horse to water, become it and drink. So I think there's sometimes I struggle with that a little bit because you feel like, what if I failed? And so definitely make it a job and have that separation. And then I think it's the fact that we have to wear so many hats. And I don't think this is just as a personal trainer. I think it's in any job where if you're self-employed personal trainer, you are the well, I'm not now, but to start off, you might be the accountant, you are the admin, you're the coach, you've got a million different hats. So sometimes it gets tricky to put all your ducks in a row. I would say they're probably the biggest challenges. Yeah.
Yeah.
I would just reiterate the fact that ask yourself again if you are interested in this job, like why you're doing it, because it's always better to get into a job like this if you're coming from a place of wanting to make some like actually positive change in people's lives, as opposed to just what your bank balance reads. Like 100%, we have to get paid, we make a living, but this job does change lives. And I think that if you just remember that on the tough days, yeah, it gets you through.
Brilliant. Well, thank you so much for your time today.
Thank you.